There you go.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So what a wonderful thing. I love all the similarities that you have in challenges, and then of course the things that you can do that we at times can only dream of. So it's wonderful. Let's see who's got questions. I'm sure there's lots. Comments. Oh, you've stunned everybody.
I can see Yale is there. So
Yeah,
long time since I've seen Yale.
Yeah.
Hi, Nadia. What an absolute pleasure. I must say, I think we all green with envy around the different institutional arrangements that exist for bids in England. I think what I just wanted to ask, if it is tenant-based in terms of the contributions, it might not have affected London Bridge so much, but many of the other bids or other cities have experienced a very real fleeing of tenant base in certain cores. You know, the break, people having to close their stores. How do you budget if these things are planned for, let's say, a 5-year plan, and then you halfway through the year and you are supposed to be receiving contributions, but of course the tenant has broken the lease and left? Are they obliged by law, or do you have to scurry to make the changes during the course of the year? How big of an impact is that?
Okay, no simple answer to that question. 317 odd different billing authorities in terms of the local authorities, and all of them read the legislation slightly differently. So some of them do allow for credits, and then the tenants will get a rebate. Some don't. Some do it in 6 months. Some do it monthly. So it depends on the area that you're based and the agreement that you have with the local authority. We've got bids in general have, particularly in London, because of their relationship with the local authority, have got fairly, you know, we've got pretty much the highest in the country, and I think that's, you know, we're at over 99% collection, and that's because of our relationship both with the local authority but also with our businesses. You know, I have somebody, along with paying considerable, you know, 3.5%. To the local authority to collect the levy, we also invest in having somebody here to have that contact with the businesses, making sure we know exactly who is paying and what they need to pay. It's been a challenge in terms of COVID. The retail bids have particularly suffered. Retail, hospitality less so. There seems to be a quicker turnaround in hospitality venues, but retail is really suffering. And then you would see your income, you know, almost halting for the retail bids. So, however, some of the cities have actually also started to suffer and but then our outlying cities have actually benefited from this working from home. We've seen quite an increase in shops, community spaces, well, business community spaces as such, using hotels and things for days, conferences, aspect. So there's a bit of a mixed bag on that. London is actually the slowest to recover in terms of the commercial, in terms of returning to work. However, London being London, we've got longer lease tenancies. So those are, if the business is still required to have their leases and pay their business rates, then they're obliged to pay the bid levy. So unless they go into administration, and then once they go into administration, there's no point in even being, even contesting that. We're just so far down the chain. So sorry, there's no simple answer to that, Yael.
No, but it's nice to get the nuances and the background. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, it is. That actually is a very interesting question, because you have such a different structure from the way we do in terms of collecting. Of course, we're all voluntary in Gauteng at the moment, and Shwani, who's with us, they are about to implement their Municipal Systems Act process, and we're going to watch that with great interest. So now, any other comments, questions? I've got a hand, I can't see. Oh, here, Michaela.
Hi, thanks. So I think obviously we're all trying to understand post-COVID, and I think the reality of South African cities and load shedding has probably meant that that bubble burst quicker than for other countries that have more stable infrastructure, that people are able to work from home sustainably. But have you seen a shift in terms of the makeup of precincts? Are you seeing more mixed use development in that space so that you've got that live, work, play? I mean, I know a lot of our neighborhoods are encouraging that type of use, and obviously trying to understand that sustainability from a bid perspective. How does that differ from those that are more specialized and targeted? And if there's been any patterns in that?
Interesting question. Yet again, no answer. Developers, they know that the aspect of we need to have mixed cities, we need to have mixed use, and they're completely frightened. We've got probably about 53,000 square meters coming live in the next 10 years here. And they are still sticking to their original plans, and it's very much commercial office sector, because they're absolutely frightened of retail. Predominantly here, the online aspect. I don't think you've got quite the same amount of online shopping as we do here. I mean, that has actually taken over now in terms of high street shops and bricks and mortar. So that's quite. But I think that the development cycle and the developers' ability to fund mixed use is really problematic. There's no. Our opportunity here is actually medical. We are one of the biggest campuses here is Guy's Hospital. It's one of the biggest hospitals in the country, and with the biggest dental facility here, both training and educating of our dentists. And we are seeing plans emerge for that, what's called biomedical, but which is labs and aspects of that. So there we're starting to see some opportunities in terms of, well, how do we get people to mix and work in a collaborative networking aspect, which could be interesting in the long run. But it's a real challenge to kind of square those circles in terms of developers and funding opportunities for mixed use. You get it's also quite a complex planning system, like I think David, you were talking about before. It is so complicated, and the returns, what we call your infrastructure levy, so your development levy that has to be paid over to the local authority, is very much structured on the old system. So whether it's residential or whether it's retail or whether it's commercial is quite different, and so does that also affect the business rate. So it's taking a long time to have answers to those mixed use areas as such, but that's something that we are very much for. That integration, that ESG principles has to be, and affordability in our city centres is frightening. People can't do the jobs because they just can't afford to live in the country, in the cities, so they're having to. The transport costs that are just not, allowing them to actually do the jobs that are paid at certain levels. So it is really challenging.
Michaela, keep going.
And then just following, I mean, you've mentioned obviously those kind of bulk, what we would call bulk contributions. Is there any mechanism in which there is ring fencing for expenditure in the bids themselves? If an area is obviously registered as a bid, obviously the challenge that we often have is all of that goes into the kitty and the city's spending it wherever that they want to spend it. And there's very often infrastructure investment that we need to see directly within our spaces. Is there a mechanism within the UK for bids to have some kind of catchment or say in how those bulk contributions are spent, potentially directing spend in their districts?
Another brilliant question. There's no specific legislation that governs that. We have managed to be a compulsory consultee in terms of for just our area in terms of the developments with the commercial developments within London Bridge, but that is purely literally my personal relationship with the local authority and how they, because we put it in a London Bridge plan, which was extensively consulted, that then fed into the government's the local government's aspect of where the investment in the infrastructure investment is required, from that side. But that's because predominantly we are a commercial business area. Our bid boundary, is a commercial area, and the business and the local authority can see where the investment needs to go to ensure that the growth for business and commercial use. There are some good examples, but it's mostly in terms of relationships, and there's nothing in terms of statutory for bids. Bids are able to take on the mantle of doing a lot of the consultation, and then influencing through that, but there's no formal mechanism. It really is at the moment still structured around your relationships with the individual authorities, and yet again it is structured around the aspect of that 5-year term. Massive infrastructure projects, we've only got 5-year terms, so to allow for those which would be require funding over more than a 5-year period, it's quite problematic in terms of the legislation, which is something that we are considering to have 10-year bid terms for established bids.
Very interesting. I noticed you haven't mentioned residential. So you talked about retail and commercial, but not converting commercial, in other words, mixed use that has residential in it.
Yeah, no, residential is really, it's almost seen as a from the systems with our councillors and the voted authority. I know that I was speaking to Paul Levy from Philadelphia Bid the other day, and they do leverage funding through residential. And here, the minute we start speaking about residential and encouraging, well, could there be some kind of contribution, the shutters come down very quickly, and there's still very much that divide between residential and commercial as such, which I think is a shame, and we need to do some work on that. But with the political system as it is, with the aspects of two system with the House of Lords and House of Commons, putting in another structure which would then make for the business environment is going to be a big challenge, and central government doesn't have the headspace for that at the moment.
It's so interesting. I mean, it's at a different level, but many of your challenges are not dissimilar to ours, actually. It's very interesting. David?
Thanks, Nadia. We're all aware of obviously the difference between our countries and our cities, but I think one of the key ones for me in this particular field that we're now discussing is the segmentation of what local government provides and what the district provides. And, I would say that the difference is that in South Africa, districts are actually having to provide basic services as well. And I'd just like to hear your comments on that and how it compares and that kind of thing, the segmentation of functions, services that you provide versus local government or government.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we really do. I mean, I really do get it's on a different scale, but it is something that we really do battle with on a daily basis. That when I came here, everything that the bid was implementing was additionality. It's not so much additionality at the moment. That the pressure on what we call our local authority, which everything from adult social care to whether children get meals at school, those aspects. I'm involved in those conversations. Are we going to be looking at funding an information aspect or a festival if we can't afford to, feed our children when they come to school? Primary school children, that's still legislated here, and people are looking at taking it. So the services, when in the height of Ukraine, people were contacting me and saying, well, what is the bid going to do if we have blackouts? And I think I've got to probably in terms of energy blackouts, and I don't think anybody, unless you've been to South Africa and lived through it, understands what energy blackouts mean, and the ability to be able to trade in that. So there are those challenges, and we are being faced with them. It's not at the same level. I'm not saying that at all. But it is really every year I'm seeing more and more conversation on terms of how can businesses who still pay their business rates. Here it's 50% in the pound, which means if you're paying £10,000 a year, let's say, on business rates, you'd be paying, on your leases, you'll be paying 5,000 on business rates. So business rates in London are eye-watering. So businesses, rightly so, are expecting back return on that, and none of that is being invested. Your business rates are just not being invested back into the areas. It's within the City of London, it's 12% is being invested back into the City of London itself. We're just outside of the City of London. It's slightly higher in this area, but it's a tiny proportion that is being invested into the infrastructure across the board for businesses.
Nadia, that's very interesting. I think also in our case, we're obviously referring to very basic services like safe and clean, which the private sector is often, so they're supposed to be doing top up, and they're often doing, very basic stuff. So that doesn't apply to many of your areas in England, I think. It applies to infrastructure and those sorts of things, I think, if I'm right, but not so much to basic services. You can comment on that in a minute, but let's bring Ish in. You'll remember Ish Macabella.
Hi, Nadia. I'm just curious to get your comments on what we call small or informal traders in that space. You understand the concept of informal traders. How are they accommodated in that space?
Okay, that system is very different here. Here you are. It's regulated. Everything here is regulated beyond its. You absolutely have to have a license for every square inch of the pavement, and you will not be getting away with informal trading. A lot of bids do manage what's called markets here, and then there's stalls and aspects on that. Some bids even have, it could even be seen as a rateable value. So the informal or the market stalls actually pay into the bids. What a lot of times happens here is the bids, I don't think very successfully, have taken on the management of those markets from the local authority, like you've done in South Africa, and allowed for that. It's a real, because the it's legislated yet again through local government. You then don't have the ability. You can try and manage it, but you, in essence, are not the manager of that. They're not paying you, in essence. So then it becomes quite a complex system, like it is there, where the local authority is paying you to do a job that you're not then mandated to kind of work directly with the traders, with the market stalls. So same challenges, but here there is still ability to enforce. There's still that ability to enforce, and that is income coming into local authorities. So they do spend some time, time and effort making sure that is managed and governed.
Definitely, your legislative framework is stronger, and your law enforcement is generally stronger. And I'm sure you work closely with, as you mentioned, with your bobbies and others. You work very closely with them. Do we have any other? I don't want to keep you, Nadia. You've been up at the crack of dawn here.
That's all right. It was great.
Very...
I could leave the house, and with my husband had to do the kids this morning, so it was fabulous. I'm having a morning off.
Lovely, and of course it's light early, so that helps. Yeah. Any other comments there, or input or questions? I'm sure if people are ever visiting the UK, they can reach out to you.
Please do, and it's my everything is on our Team London Bridge. It's nadia@teamlondonbridge.co.uk. Would love to show you around. We are very proud of what we do. It's all about the place. So do come and say hi when you are in the UK.
Thank you. No, I'm sure somebody is going to take that up, as I did very recently, and I loved seeing you. Thank you. There's some things that stand out for me here, apart from the similarities. Before you go away, I love this well-measured bravery. I love that. And from hanging baskets to placemaking, it wasn't quite your wording, but I also love that too. Thank you so much. We've got so much to learn. And obviously, of course, the BID Foundation, I have reached out to them once, or actually several times, because these industry standards are things that we're extremely keen on. So I'll reach out again, and you might help me there, which will help us, I beg your pardon. I think that would be fantastic. Definitely. Thanks so much. Yep. Happy day.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone.
Lovely to see you.
Stay warm. Bye.